Let's dive into the so-called forever game myth that has really taken hold among some content creators in the NASB2 community. There's this constant push from certain YouTubers and streamers for Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 to become some kind of endless game that keeps getting new content, DLC, and patches forever. It's a little strange if you ask me, because it's not really how most games are structured to work. Studios don't generally design games with the idea that they'll keep going indefinitely, unless they're specifically built as live service games. Yet here we see creators acting like NASB2 should always have fresh content, even when the core gameplay might still have issues. To understand the difference, let's look at how most games traditionally work. Usually, a studio spends a lot of time and resources creating a game, they release it, and then after a series of updates or patches to polish it, they consider it done. The focus then shifts to their next project. That's normal in gaming, and it's pretty common for most single-player or even multiplayer-focused games. Sure, there might be DLC here and there, but the main structure of the game is usually complete after release. However, some NASB2 content creators seem almost desperate for the game to keep receiving new additions, new characters, stages, game modes, as if it should just go on and on. This forever game mindset isn't typical and doesn't match how most games are developed, unless we're talking about massive live service titles or MMOs, which NASB2 isn't. But why do they push this idea so much? Some might argue it's just genuine excitement for the game and a desire to see it reach its full potential. And hey, that's a good thing. Every game deserves to be the best it can be. However, we can't ignore that a lot of these creators seem to need the game to stay in the spotlight to keep their own channels relevant. Think about it. If NASB2 stops getting new updates or content, those high view counts they get from DLC drops, character reveals, or patch breakdowns will also slow down. They might lose that surge of excitement and interest that brings in new subscribers and boosts engagement. It's almost like they rely on the game constantly trending to keep their content fresh. Without updates, the hype dwindles, and with it, potentially their viewer counts. What's even stranger is that these creators, who claim to love the game, often only return to NASB2 when there's new content. When a new DLC character drops or some big update is released, they're right there making videos about it, hyping it up. But between those updates, often they're silent, focusing on other games or content that will bring in the views. That raises the question, are they really invested in NASB2? Or is it just a way to get clicks? Because if they genuinely cared about the game itself, you'd think they'd be making content on it consistently, discussing strategies, analyzing gameplay, or talking about its unique features, even when there isn't any fresh content to cover. Instead, it often feels like they're only interested when there's a marketing push from the publisher or developer. It's also worth noting that there's a big difference between single-player games and live service games. NASB2 is primarily designed to be playable offline, with modes that don't rely on constant online support. That's a huge plus because it means you can still play it even if the servers go down or if support for the game eventually ends. Live service games, on the other hand, depend heavily on that online connection, and when the servers shut down, that's it, the game is gone. Single-player games can live on. They can be enjoyed years down the line without needing anything extra from the developers. NASB2 can be one of those games where you can fire it up years from now and still enjoy its core experience without needing to be online or reliant on the developers for more updates. Then there's the fact that some of these creators seem genuinely upset if people point out flaws in the game, bugs, or balance issues. If anyone mentions these problems, it's often met with resistance, as if being critical of the game means you don't support it. But isn't it the job of the community to point out areas that need improvement? Ignoring issues or pretending that everything is perfect doesn't help the game grow or get better. In fact, pushing developers to add more content on top of a flawed foundation might even make things worse because the core problems don't get addressed. This could lead to more frustration for players who want to enjoy the game at its best, but feel let down by the unresolved issues. There's also a side to this where it seems like some creators have an audience that only cares about the game when there's something new. So, in a way, the content creators are almost pressured to keep pushing for more updates just to keep their viewers happy. If the audience isn't interested in regular gameplay videos or deeper analyses, then the creators have to keep waiting for those big, attention-grabbing updates. It's a cycle that benefits nobody in the long term, especially if it means the game ends up feeling more like a content machine than an actual polished experience. At the end of the day, this forever game idea feels less about NASB 2 reaching its potential and more about the need for constant content. Maybe it's about views, or maybe it's about maintaining relevance in a competitive online landscape. But constantly begging for new DLC and updates won't magically turn NASB 2 into an evergreen title. That can only happen with a stable, well-rounded foundation that players enjoy coming back to, update or not. So, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you think NASB 2 should keep getting endless updates? Or is it better for the game to stand on its own?